Session musicians, also called studio musicians, are instrumental and vocal performers who were available to work with others at live performances or recording sessions. Usually such musicians are not permanent members of a musical ensemble with the singers that they are accompanying, and they often do not achieve individual fame in their own right as soloists or bandleaders. However, some backing bands of session musicians have become well known. The term is applied to those working in all musical styles. Versatility is one of the most important skills of session musicians, as they may have to perform in a range of different settings. Session musicians are expected to learn parts rapidly and be skilled in both sight reading and improvising chords or a bassline from a lead sheet or chord chart. Session musicians are used in any situation where musical skills are needed on a short-term basis. Typically, session musicians are used by recording studios to provide backing tracks for other musicians for recording sessions and live performances. Recording for advertising, film and television, or theatrical productions. Some session musicians formed a rhythm section that was repeatedly used for recordings. The terms session musician and studio musician are now synonymous, though in past decades the latter term more typically described musicians who were associated with a particular record company, recording studio or entertainment agency. History and associations. 1920s-1930s. During the 1920s and 1930s, most record companies had their own prolific studio bands turning out records of the latest pop hits. These were often made up by jazz and dance band musicians who were at the same time members of regular working bands and who divided their time between studio work during the day and live performances in the evenings. Notable such studio musicians include Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey, Benny Goodman, Teddy Wilson, Oscar Peterson, Jack Teagarden, Red Nichols, Mfsb, Andy Sanella, and Mike Mosiello. 1960s-1970s. Perhaps the best-known session band are Booker T and the MGs, who were the house band at Stax Records in Memphis during the 1960s and 1970s, playing behind Otis Redding, Eddie Floyd, Sam and Dave, Isaac Hayes and the Staple Singers, amongst many others. MG's guitarist Steve Cropper co-wrote many of Redding's hits, and the MGs produced albums and hit singles such as Green Onions in their own right while being the house band at Stax. Although session musicians have long and successful careers and can achieve considerable fame within the music industry, they rarely achieve popular celebrity. Notable exceptions include the members of the band Toto, who met in various recording sessions. John Paul Jones and Jimmy Page, who were well known as session musicians and arrangers before their later success with Led Zeppelin. Keyboardist Rick Wakeman. And renowned vocalists Valerie Simpson, Lisa Fischer and Luther Vandross. The song A Little Green Rosetta from the Frank Zappa album Joe's Garage lampoons Steve Gadd's status as one of the highest-paid session drummers in popular music. Among the most prolific established studio musicians are the Wrecking Crew. Based in Los Angeles, the Wrecking Crew has recorded innumerable songs and albums since the 1960s. The Funk Brothers were session musicians who performed the backing to many Motown Records recordings from the late 1950s to the early 1970s, as well as a few non-Motown recordings, notably on Jackie Wilson's Your Love Keeps Lifting Me, Higher and Higher. The legendary Billy Preston was a session musician who played with Mahalia Jackson and was known as the fifth Beatle for his work with the Beatles. The Los Angeles singer-songwriter scene associated with the Troubadour nightclub in Laurel Canyon in the late 1960s to mid-1970s was supported by musicians Russ Kunkel, Danny Korchmar, Leland Sklar and Craig Douage. This session combo, nicknamed the Section or the Mafia, backed many musicians, among others, Carole King, James Taylor, Jackson Browne, Warren Zevon, Chris Christopherson and David Crosby. A few session musicians have even built reputations of notoriety. English session singer Tony Burrows appeared so often as a frontman for various one-hit wonder studio groups, in a short period of time during the early 1970s, that his attempts at a solo career under his own name were hampered, due in part to burnout. Another well-known group of session musicians is called the Nashville A-Team and is made up of A-list studio musicians who recorded during the Nashville sound era. Their contributions began in the 1950s with artists such as Elvis Presley. Some of these musicians are still alive today. The original A-team includes bassist Bob Moore, guitarists Grady Martin, Hank Garland, Ray Denton, and Harold Bradley, drummer Buddy Harmon, pianists Floyd Cramer and Hargus Pig Robbins, fiddler Tommy Jackson, steel guitarist Pete Drake, harmonicist Charlie McCoy, saxophonist Boots Randolph, and vocal groups the Jordanaires and the Anita Kerr Singers. The Muscle Shoals rhythm section comprising Barry Beckett, Roger Hawkins, David Hood, and Jimmy Johnson, also known as the Swampers, is another well-established group of session musicians. They have become known for the Muscle Shoals sound. Many of the recordings done in the Memphis area, which included Muscle Shoals, Alabama, used the Memphis horns in their arrangements. Mfsb was a group of soul music studio musicians based in Philadelphia at the Sigma Sound Studios. They later went on to become a name-brand instrumental group, and their best-known hit was TSOP, better known as the theme from Soul Train. Selected list: Booker T and the MGs, the Andantes, the Blossoms, the Funk Brothers, the Jordanaires, the Memphis Boys, the Originals, the Ray Charles Singers, the Sinfonia of London, the Sweet Inspirations, Toto, the Wrecking Crew, Compass Point All-Stars, Sly and Robbie, Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section, Mfsb. References. External links: The Usual Suspects, a tribute to Los Angeles studio musicians, online session musicians.